Welcome back to another CaseCold episode. Tonight, another Courtney is our topic of conversation. You may have heard of Courtney Taylor, a Caucasian female who killed her African-American boyfriend. Eerily reminiscent of the Emmett Till case of the 1950s. This case is quite concerning because it sparks racial questions. A white woman allegedly kills her black boyfriend. At this moment, Taylor is not in police custody, despite being the number one suspect for this case. To most, it appears as if white privilege and wealth are the only thing that has kept her from a life behind bars. Keep listening to hear our takes on this OnlyFans model turned murderer. Welcome to our second episode of CaseCold. So today we are talking about Courtney Taylor, aka Courtney Cleaney. I think that's how you say her last name. I'm not sure which one's her. I think Courtney Cleaney is her like legal name, but she goes by Courtney Taylor as far as being like an influencer and OnlyFans model. So we're talking about this interesting case that involves Courtney and her then boyfriend Christian, who has since passed away, and getting into the details of this case. I'm not going to get into it now because that's kind of what we're talking about today in the case cold. But this one is very peculiar in my personal opinion, and I'm a true fan, a true crime fanatic kind of person. I really enjoy watching those types of videos and diving deep into different types of murders and whatnot. The psyche of those individuals really interests me. But this one is pretty perplexing because it involves some different aspects that are not normally included in a murder and or a crime. So that's what we're talking about today is this OnlyFans model that has turned into a murderer. So let's get on into the episode.
Yeah. So this was a really, I saw this all over TikTok when it first came out, like about the murder, about Courtney Taylor. And people were obviously had their specific commentary and everything. But I didn't dive too deep into it at the time because, I'm just scrolling through TikTok just casually. But I did catch that, like, this case is so, hot button because of the racial elements to it. Courtney Taylor being a white woman model influencer, and then the man that she was in a relationship with being an African-American man. So, or being a Nigerian male, excuse me, not necessarily like African American as far as like a Black American. He's an African man born, I think, in America. Anyway, if that makes sense. But yeah. So I don't know if we stated his name, but the man's name was Christian Toby Obumelsali.
I don't know how to say that.
I know I messed it up. Christian. We're gonna call him Christian. Yeah, so he and something else I think is important to note about him is he had very controversial views on Black women. And he was sort of like a little mini Kevin Samuels, like just spouting out this sort of like hate for Black women. Like I think either his tweets or something, he was like, "So glad I'm with a white girl because Black girls don't blah blah blah." And like stuff. So he was very much a like, unfortunately
one of those
like kind of self-hating Black male. Like, let's find in order to praise white women, have to put down Black women. That kind of.
And we see who took him out.
And then and that's what's like a plot twist about this whole thing is like a white woman ends up like being his murderer, right? What the object of desire, fatal attraction at its absolute best. It was gruesome. But yeah, so do you want to give us a little breakdown of what happened on that day, kind of how, what in our research we found of like the events of that day, the day of the murder.
Yeah, okay. I also will say about Courtney Taylor too. So just like Toby was only interested in dating white women, she was only interested in dating Black men. So interesting little relationship there, right? So day of murder happened on April 3rd, 2022. So earlier this year, police were called around about 5:00, where they responded to, I guess, a call of of an injury to Christian. I'm not sure who called, but they respond to this call around 5 p.m. Transport is sent out or whatever. Christian is taken to the hospital. So the boyfriend's taken to the hospital where he later dies from his injuries. I guess upon the medical examination, Christian was stabbed in his shoulder. And I guess I'm assuming that's maybe the injury that he succumbed to. I'm not really sure all the details, which a lot of things are not released because it is a criminal case. I'm not sure how this works. We'll get into that later. But anyway, so Taylor is seen sitting in the luxury Miami apartment her and Christian shared, where she's covered in blood and in handcuffs. I'm pretty sure that's what I saw on TikTok, and I was like, "Oh, what is this?" But kept scrolling because I really wasn't really into it. But yeah, there's an image of that online. Look it up. It's pretty interesting now that I know about the case. So the case was I guess considered like a domestic dispute. But here's the interesting twist. So Taylor obviously is the one that stabbed him. However, upon her getting arrested, she threatened to kill herself and was then taken to a mental facility for an evaluation. So this is something known as the Baker's Act in Florida, where they will send you to a mental facility if you threaten to kill yourself, instead of sending you directly to jail. And they hold you for 72 hours, I believe.
Yeah.
But
something also to note about the Baker's Act is removing rights away from the individual and like temporarily, basically, so that the state or whoever can send them to the proper mental
facility.
Yeah, mental health.
Mm-hmm.
But go ahead.
Yeah, so within 72 hours, the homegirl was then released. And since then, no charges have been made against Taylor for Christian's murder. So within the next few days, Taylor was seen out in a bar in Miami after the murder with, I think, a family member. So that's kind of a rundown of the events that has led us to this episode. What do you think, Courtney?
I mean, it definitely feels like it's like a recipe for disaster. Sort of feels like that, especially, with the witnesses who had called up to like 3 months prior with, complaining about the domestic disputes, as well as like people saying that the relationship was toxic, and people saying they saw him hit her hit him, that kind of thing. Yeah. So, I mean, it definitely feels like a recipe for disaster. But I think what's most concerning to me is the foundation of their relationship is
very rocky,
built on this fetish for both sides. Like her being, I only date rich black men, right? I only date white women. So it seems like the nature of their relationship is disingenuous because it's this like, because they physically fit the aesthetic of what they're looking for, or quote looking for in a relationship. That's why they're in a relationship, not because it was some sort of genuine connection. And so that can almost certainly lead to something disastrous happen, i.e. in this case, like a murder.
No, I agree. Yeah, it definitely seemed, let alone, I guess we don't know the ins and outs of like how the relationship started, but built on this fetish or this fantasy of what you're going to get out of said woman, right? Then you put toxic behaviors on top of that, such as being domestically abusive on both ends, it seems like, is a recipe for disaster.
I feel like they were this like Instagram internet couple who like linked up, who were like trying to live this fast, luxurious life in Miami, and neither one of them really had the personal maturity faculties to really be in a sustainable relationship with somebody, and so they ended up in this explosive situation, you know.
Yeah.
But I do
I do
think
think it sucks for both of them because it seems like they both were being abused in the situation. I did read. I want to say I don't. Hmm?
it was like a relationship dispute that went too far, and someone.
Yeah. Which was it seems like a matter of time because they have been known for having these domestic disputes and them being physically abusive. So it was just like a matter of time. It seems like to me before it went too far.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, somebody had to lose their life in that, and it happened to be Christian. But I also read something too that she was the primary aggressor, which I want to hit on. That women can also be very abusive, and physically, mentally, emotionally. So that women are not excluded from being the abuser. Exactly. So we are not going to come at Christian for Taylor being the abuser to him and him not being quote unquote a man. And like, no, we don't do that. Anybody can be abused by anyone, period. Abuse has no face, no look, no title.
Exactly. Yeah. And I guess another troubling thing is that she was really let off the hook despite being the only obvious suspect in the case because, like you said, they know she stabbed him in the shoulder, like that was confirmed, and or that Christian was stabbed in the shoulder, and she's like got blood all over her body when the cops come and show up, and I'm assuming they're the only ones in the apartment, so you know what I mean, like optics of this woman, and then she was not detained, immediately. Or charged or arrested for his murder. So, like you said, that Friday after the murder, she was seen in a bar. So I think that is concerning as well because then you really do get into that conversation about privilege.
Oh yeah,
and benefits.
White girl tears.
Yeah, white girl tears, white girl kind of whatever, and then the optics of it. You know, I mean, the optics look like this big bad black man was harming this poor little white girl, and so when the cops come, they're looking at the optics, you know, and so it looks like, well, if she did stab him, it was with good reason.
Yeah.
Versus we don't know if she had good reason or not. You don't know, you know. And unfortunately,
and from my understanding, what I didn't understand was that even if you have a self-defense case, typically the person is arrested and at least charged with something and maybe let out on bond if it's their first case kind of thing. I will preface this by saying I am no lawyer, so I don't know the ins and outs of the law, especially not in Florida. But usually there's then a criminal case to see whether or not said person is guilty or acted in self-defense, right? That was just not the case here. They just let Taylor go. They just let her go. So that's conflicting. And it seems like they're not going to, if there's no criminal charge, they cannot criminally take it to court. So it's somebody's life was lost in this. At the end of the day, it is a murder. He died at the hands of somebody else, whether it was self-defense or not. And typically in those types of cases, somebody is taken to court and has to do some sort of time. Some sort of justice is sought after. And here, Taylor is just free to do her thing. She's just...
I guess they went off of, well, this must have been self-defense. I think there should have been, even if they eventually ruled it as self-defense, because I can see that going either way, really, just optically, because we don't know what was happening in that house.
For sure.
But I do think that to just sort of not even, not really go through the proper procedure, just to let her off immediately, I think that shows privilege and kind of the cops letting her off just very quickly. I was like, oh, this must have been self-defense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because she's a white woman.
Especially when somebody's dead. Or taken to the hospital. you know?
Yeah, which begs the question: if the roles were reversed, say Christian killed Taylor, for example, that would have, me personally, and being an African American woman, that would have not gone the same way. He would have been in jail for sure.
Yeah.
I like wholeheartedly believe that, and
Yeah.
based off past crimes in the United States, let alone Florida, that would have been a no-brainer. He's guilty. He's going to jail. Criminal case. Even if he would have did the whole crying thing to go to a mental institution, threatening to kill himself, I doubt he even would have went to a mental institution, or they would have allowed him to use the Baker's Act. Period. Let alone not be charged at all.
Well, I think like we were saying, the optics of it all point totally in her favor / point and point totally not in his favor. Like, he is a Black male. Men are not seen as someone who should be in any kind of emotional distress, number one. Then Black men especially are seen as like these threats, right? So that makes a perfect storm for her to use to scapegoat, if she is scapegoating him as the aggressor, the violent one, the one who made her, who pushed her to behave that way, right? Versus, and then she can always rely on, well, being a white woman tears to say, well, I was attacked, I was this, I was that, despite she could have clearly had a hand in it. And the witnesses are saying that it was back and forth.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, I think it's just this case really does come down to a lot of the optics of it all, especially since Christian's not there to corroborate anything or whatever.
Yeah.
But
it's interesting.
Yeah, it definitely is interesting. I mean, it's sort of concerning too, because again, we've definitely seen, like, with the the rise of the Karens and that word coming up of like women weaponizing whiteness and using their tears to basically negotiate between themselves and the police and authorities, to elicit some empathy from the authorities. This situation makes it feel like she could have been weaponizing white woman tears.
Oh, for sure.
To get off. That's what privilege is.
Which my thing is, like, if you stab somebody, the threat. Most people are aware of the consequences of stabbing somebody. There is a possibility of death, right? Mind you, you're not aware of what's internal to the site that you are choosing to stab, right? So it's like, it's odd to me, very odd to me, that there was no consideration, whether in self-defense or not. It's still somebody's life that was taken at the hand of somebody else's. That's still a murder. So why would you not criminally pursue said murder?
I don't know.
Unless there's white privilege.
Or some other like factor in there. I think at the very least, I think the facts of the case, what the police saw when they responded, that should have been enough to detain her at the very least. I mean, she was covered in blood. So prime suspect number one, actually. But I think that should have been at least enough to detain her. Now, they could get into the nitty-gritty of was this self-defense or not, and that should have come out, I think, in court. But
exactly,
I think immediately probably detaining, because somebody's like dead,
And if that was a black woman doing that to a white male, then even that case would not go the same way.
Yeah.
I
mean, I think they see blackness differently. I think they see women differently. I think there's something to be said about the girl being an OnlyFans model too. I think they see attractiveness differently. We think about the type of person who shows up at your house is a cop who's like your average dude, right? A lot of them subscribe to OnlyFans.
I'm sure.
Do stuff like that. So, like, I think her combination of whiteness, being a woman, being a young woman, being, an OnlyFans model, I think that combination can absolutely combine in that moment to have her have at least enough leeway to get out of being detained. at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
They might not be able
Yeah.
to stop all criminal charges, but to get her out of being detained, I can see that because that's a police officer making a decision in that moment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I will, just for definition purposes, we're going to talk about what is white privilege since we keep using that word. So it is an inherent advantage possessed by a white person on the basis of their race in a society characterized by a racial inequality and injustice. So just saying that, quote unquote, in America, the superior race would be, quote unquote, whiteness, has an inherent advantage over counterparts such as minorities, Black people, because of their race and blah, blah, blah. So that's basically, in my opinion, what's being used here. She's white. She's a female. He's Black. He's a male. So it's like, oh, he's, he can, it's almost like a bear and a bunny. You know what I mean? Like, oh, he's going to destroy her. Like, he had to do something. He had to do something to her in order for that to happen. Not thinking that she was maybe the aggressor,
Yeah.
Not, and the mind-boggling part of this is they're not even taking the time to look into the case because there's no criminal charges. You can't. I don't believe you can do a case without charges. So it kind of defeats the purpose, and it would be a waste of time. So you can't tell me. And mind you, she's a number one suspect. Like, nobody else was in the apartment. It's not making sense.
Yeah.
So white privilege has to play. White privilege, white tears. Her being an OnlyFans model, I'm sure a lot of people know who she is. Being a celebrity well, I wouldn't say a celebrity, maybe an influencer. In Miami, I'm sure, crying victim, saying she's going to kill herself. All of these things in combination has then got her off.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think you can rule that out. Like, socially, that's what privilege is. That's how it works. And I think something else to understand about privilege is it's just that word inherent advantages. I think some people really get the idea of privilege being something somebody had to be, I guess, given in their lifetime or something. White privilege exists because you are white, because society is stratified and set up on where whiteness is superior and all other, people of color are inferior. So our laws are created with the protecting the white person in mind. So that is a privilege, right? It's not something. It's nothing tangible you can necessarily see. It's how our society operates, And white privilege informs a lot of these grand narratives that we all subscribe to, like the idea of, like Caitlin was saying, the bear and the bunny. That's a narrative. That's a story we all believe about who's the bad guy and who's the good guy, who must be the aggressor, who has to be the victim. That's something that we have been told. And white privilege informs those narratives, right? Because the bunny is got to be the soft one, got to be the victim, got to be the person being preyed upon, right?
Exactly. Well, they could be very well friends.
Yeah. And the bear has to be the one who is attacking. Which is not necessarily the case because Caitlin well knows Caitlin has a white bunny right now who attacks the cat who's 3 times
all the
bigger
time,
than
who
her.
could rip him to shreds.
Rip him to shreds. But you would look at it and be like, the bunny's not doing anything. No.
Yeah. You would think he's innocent because he's like 3 pounds. She's probably like 13. She could sit on him and crush him if she wanted to. But she's like deathly afraid of him for whatever reason. She could easily like scratch his eye out, like sit on him, like run him down. But she doesn't. So optics are not everything, honey.
Exactly.
Nor your preconceptions or your stereotypes.
Exactly. But looking from the outside, you'd be like, oh, the bunny, he's got to be the one who's being abused, but he's biting other people, nipping other people. But yeah, so I think that's important to understand about white privilege and grand narratives is that informs how we see certain people, how we behave. You know what I mean? Especially when it comes to legal things and things where it's murky. Like, the cops don't really know what happened. They weren't there. They couldn't have really seen what was happening. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of project this narrative and run with a certain narrative, saying, "Okay, well, this must be how it looks." But then, or this must, because it looks like this, it must be how it went down, and that's not necessarily the case. But there's real life consequences, ramifications for this. You know?
Oh yeah. There is like some odd similarities to that guy, Kevin. Is it Kevin Samuels?
Yeah, Kevin Samuels. He also died
Very, yeah,
with a white woman
yeah,
in
yep.
a rented apartment. Isn't that weird?
Mm-hmm. And bashed women
And
at
bashed
the
black.
hands of women, not at the hands, but women were both there. Um, so ironic,
It's
ironic.
I just think it's this is like another comment just on black men and their kind of how their culture around how they view interracial dating and dating white women or whatever. I
Mm-hmm.
I think they really need to have a check on how they're going around speaking about black women in relationship to what they personally decide to do with white women, because they continue to push this narrative about black women being so bad, so awful. But who are you dying in the hands of?
The one you sought after so bad.
Exactly. I'm like, Kevin Samuels died, and I think he was with either a white woman or somebody non-black,
Yeah.
and he died in an apartment in a, he didn't even have his own house. He was preaching about being high value, didn't have his own house.
Mm-hmm.
Like, YouTube was like a form of income for him, right? He like projected this whole image of what, a black man needs to be, what a high value black man needs to look like, right? And ended up
Obviously
dying
not you.
in one of the most pathetic anti high
Ways.
value ways. Same thing
Mm-hmm.
to this guy. He preached about black women not being this or whatever. And it's like they talk kind of out of their behinds, out of their neck, and then end up in these really compromised, pathetic situations because they're trying to like desperately achieve the white woman or achieve that, like, you know what I mean? And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like sell your soul, or what is it? Gain the world to lose your soul.
Yeah.
It's sort of like that. And it's interesting because I'm like, we don't see black women doing this on the same level. Like, how many black women have died at the hands of, just spouting out anti-black hate? First off, black women don't really
Mm-hmm.
spout out anti-black male hate like that. If they bring up concerns, they bring up legitimate concerns
Yeah.
about
It's
how
factual.
just,
It's not.
yeah, it's like this
And a lot of
success.
times, like black men are always like, "Oh, I don't date black women because we hold you to a higher standard. You want to somebody that you can run over, get over on, somebody that you can tell what to do, when to do it, how to do it." And most black women are not going for that.
Mhm.
Black women could run laps over black men in a lot of situations. So, like, please stop. And let's be honest. No offense to Christian. I'm sorry your life was lost, but as a black woman, we do not want you either. So,
Well, yeah, if you're gonna talk down, like,
exactly.
and you have to realize Black American culture is mostly matriarchal.
Yeah.
Like, black women take the lead in our families most of the time. Black
Mm-hmm.
women take the lead as far as like education and like, you know,
And
build,
that's because we typically have no choice. Not
I mean,
like
yeah,
to
yeah,
me is I think we seek after more of an equal, but most of the time you have to.
won't have no choice. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. But it's not where our culture is matriarchal by
Oh yeah, by
for like
nature.
default in the in
Yeah.
force. I don't think it's because black women are just like, yeah, we want to be totally matriarchal. Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
they did seek equals, but a lot of our family structures have been left in these situations where women had to be matriarchal. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm thinking about our family on both sides. Both of our parents came from matriarchal systems, and it was because they had to be on some level,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I just think that I think it's time for black men to start having serious conversations about how they view black women, how they treat black women, and thinking that they're
Mm-hmm.
running the absolute opposite of that is going to somehow save them. That's not
Mm-hmm.
gonna that's not necessarily gonna save you. You have to do the work to improve, to be the kind of person that any woman would want, and
Exactly.
you know what I mean? Anybody of
Mm-hmm.
substance would want. just running to the opposite is not going to, as you know, Christian and Kevin Samuels have proved. What is running to the opposite doing fully? You know, and that's not to say
It
we're
got
not
you killed.
right.
Just saying.
Like, and no one's saying you can't have interracial relationships. We're saying that if you have an interracial relationship which is based on a superficial idea about someone, you're not in a relationship.
Yeah.
A fetish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even like Courtney. So Courtney Taylor, the white woman, you could say she only dated him because he was a rich black man. And you see where that got them. It wasn't, you know, it seemed like to me there was it just wasn't too genuine, maybe. So she was after the money, and maybe killing him was about the money. Who knows? Because he is
I've seen
influencer.
I mean, and you can also talk about influencers and how kind of their lifestyle is so
problematic.
Yeah,
could do anything for $1.
Anything for $1. They sort of live these sort of like reckless lifestyles, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, and then I'm just looking optically. She's like, Snow Bunny kind of Instagram.
Oh yeah,
girl.
She reminds me of the girls from what's that thing? The Huff guy, the Playboy bunny thing.
Yeah,
she gives me that kind of vibe.
Yeah, she's like that, and I feel like he's just like average black man, so they look mismatched as far as like.
I think beyond average black guy. I think it really is about the money for her. She clearly said she goes after rich black men. Preference
that's
like on the rich.
I think it's predatory on her half.
I think for sure. But before she said, I prefer to date black men, she said, I only date rich. That's the first word she said. It's about money. And I'm pretty sure black men, probably easy for her to run over. You know what I mean? Like, odd to me. Most women who, especially white women who say stuff like that, it's for some ulterior motive.
Yeah.
I've rarely seen a genuine relationship between, especially with a white woman to a black man. I've never seen it be genuine. And I've seen a couple. So
I like to think that there are genuine black male white women
I think so
out there. I don't think they're totally disingenuine.
Yeah, I just haven't seen them.
I haven't seen them, but I do think culturally, I'm just gonna speak culturally from the black men I've had the experience of knowing. Culturally, they tend not to really be putting much thought into like, is this the kind of person I want to be in a relationship with? A lot of times it is about the surface aesthetics.
Yeah.
And surface aesthetics get you killed.
It's all about the optics of what it looks like. Is this going to sell? Is this going to, especially like with them being influencers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure a lot of like status and who they were and money went into a lot of the thought of, let me date her. The opportunity, it seems like.
Yeah.
There's a friend of theirs that said that like that she knew them. I guess she was mostly friends with the guy, so Christian more than anything. But she commented, she's like made a Twitter, I guess kind of like a thread or whatever. I don't really know much about Twitter, so I'm gonna say Twitter thread, but if I'm wrong, sorry. Saying that it was not confirmed whether or not he was killed in his sleep or if he was awake, which is problematic. If that assumption was made, then he was blatantly killed. That's not a domestic dispute, period. That's murder, right?
Yeah.
Which I didn't know that either, but I'm assuming she maybe she knows more because she was friends with the couple. And then she also said that she doesn't want people supporting Taylor because she I guess because she was majority of the time the aggressor in their domestic disputes that she saw between the couple. So, yeah, she wants justice for Christian. This is the white female, by the way. She wants justice for Christian because she's like, there's more to the story kind of thing. Mm-hmm. and whatnot. So that's interesting, being that I want to say she's one of the witnesses, but she's one of the people that actually hung out with them and knew them. So a little suspicious.
I also see her like in these braids, like cornrows.
Oh, yeah, it's odd.
Yeah,
She's like trying to be a white black girl.
Yeah, she's giving very much uninformed white woman.
For sure. She's giving appropriation is what she's giving.
Yeah. She's giving Whoa, you know that Whoa Vicky girl on TikTok.
But well, yeah.
Murderer.
That's a different conversation for a different day.
Spice of murder in there. But yeah, this is from a black woman's perspective, just honestly, my raw emotion, you hate to say this, but it's almost an I told you so. Too.
Yeah, it's like I saw this coming
with the Christian man. And it's not that I'm not really not trying to stereotype all white women as murderers. I'm not saying that. But given the background and her stated fetish, his stated fetish, and his, open disdain for black women, it's giving very much I told you so. And it's hard to be fully empathetic because it's like, if you see a train wreck coming and you tell them to get off the tracks and they stay on the tracks, it's like, I don't know what to tell you.
It's gonna hit you eventually.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 1000%. It's, while I feel bad that Christian's life was lost in this, it really is like, oof, I saw this coming, tried to tell you, tried to warn you. So it's, and that's not to say that you, like, from Christian standpoint, that's not to say that you can't have a preference in who you choose to date as far as physical appearance is concerned.
I do think prejudice.
Yeah, preference is a difference from being prejudiced.
No, preference is prejudice.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you could say that, because it really is not about the look. It's really about quality of a woman, which, Courtney, now you can beg into question, was she really a quality woman? I mean, so, but, Christian. His parent, well, I guess his family created a GoFundMe or whatever, and people are donating, I guess. But they're like, oh, he's such a good guy, and da-da-da-da. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
I think his family has to reconcile with his comments, too, about black women.
He has to be held accountable.
Yeah, I mean, even I'm sure his mother was sitting there like, you're talking about black women, but I'm your mother here having to clean up the mistakes.
The white woman's mess.
Yeah, clean up, clean up something and bury my child behind somebody who was non-black. And you're talking about black women, and I am your mother, a black woman who's having
raised you. Like,
I'm having to take care of my dead child, and I raised you, and you're dead because of somebody who's non-black. Like, that's conflicting. That has to be conflicting for his mother.
I bet. Yeah, because I mean, he is bashing the very thing that she is.
Exactly.
Unless he's only targeting black women. It seemed like black women as a whole to me, but because he's Nigerian. But I mean, he wasn't going to Nigeria to find a woman. He only wanted white women. He made that very clear. Very clear.
You can get into the conversation about. That's why I think preference is prejudice, because when you're fighting specifically for a type of person, I do think that is your preference is informed by a prejudice.
For me, it depends on what it is. If it's a physical preference, then that can become problematic because you're going for this physical thing. First of all, physical appearance gets you to a relationship, but it does not sustain. Okay. So if that's what you're looking for, keep on trying. Keep on trying. You're going to roll through a lot of people, which is, I think, a lot of the reason why we get into like hookup culture and blah, 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 where people are not in steady, stable relationships because you're looking for the optics of what this relationship looks like instead of looking for a quality person that you can sustain life with. But if you have a preference as far as what you want in a person, so like for me, my preference is I want somebody that's emotionally mature. If you're not emotionally mature, get out the way. That, to me, that's not prejudice.
I've got out of standard.
Yeah, I guess you could call that a standard.
To me is I'm not accepting anything. A preference to me is this like, I
A
guess,
choice.
prefer. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
more like a choice. I see this as somehow better than everything else.
This. Yeah,
Which
it's
you
like
have
a
to
comparison.
question, why do I see this as better than
Yeah.
everything else in my mind?
Mm-hmm.
A standard is I will not accept anything less because this is what I deserve.
Yeah. I guess, okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Well, maybe it's just different terminology for me. So that's why
Yeah.
I consider a preference prejudice. I had to check my own
Mm-hmm.
too. I used to be like, oh, I just have a preference for this type of person or blah, blah, blah. And it's not, to me, I don't have, I lead with standards now. I will not accept this type of person.
Yeah.
I don't care if you are Asian or if you are black or white or Irish or Brazilian. I don't care.
Not Irish, honey.
It's the kind of person you are. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's the quality of the person.
Yeah. And I think some of your standards can be physical in the sense of like, you don't want to make it too like whatever, but I had to stop. I don't like the racial thing because I do feel like that's really wrapped up in that's society's preferences and those grand narratives, like we were saying, that really form that idea of like whiteness somehow being better, or
Oh, for sure.
you know, let's see, somebody who's high earning somehow being better or something like that, or somebody who's more public, like an Instagram influencer, somehow being better. That can get to be dangerous because then you stop thinking about who this person is.
And what they can offer you. They become an opportunity and not a relationship.
Yeah. And a standard is, in my opinion, when you take the physical out of the standard, it becomes who is this individual? And I will not accept less than said person's qualities, And if you just can't meet the standards, then you can't meet the standards, boo. Get out. You got
exactly. Got to go. Hit the door.
Seriously. But yeah, this is really interesting too because it recalls the Emmett Till case.
Yep.
As we know. Which for those who don't know what Emmett Till is, give a little brief history. But the Emmett Till case happened in 1955. Or in 1955, that's when Emmett Till's murder was brought to national attention. But so in later August of 1955, Emmett Till, who's a 14-year-old boy, was visiting relatives in Mississippi. I think they were at some like corner store or a gas station or something. Emmett Till like whistled at a white woman who was coming out of the store, and obviously they were not having that in 1955. And so because of whistling, he was basically kidnapped by Carolyn Bryant is the woman he was whistling at, by Carolyn's husband, I think brother-in-law, had kidnapped him, and they brutally murdered him, like severed this young man, right? They dumped his body in the Tallahatchie River in Mississippi, and he really became sort of like a martyr of the civil rights movement. He prompted a lot of people to get involved because his mother, I think her name was Mamie Till, she chose to televise his funeral and to have an open casket so like people could see the damage that was done to his face. Like they had to reconstruct his face.
Reconstruct it. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's how brutally they had murdered him. Like, and they murdered him for whistling at a white woman or making basically a pass at a white woman, and he was 14 years old, right? So, yeah, it became national news murder. It was all over the newspapers. It was on TV and everything, and it really prompted a lot of people to get involved in the civil rights movement. But what I think is interesting about that is it relates to this Courtney Taylor case because it's about it's definitely got that grand narrative surrounding it about what is the relationship between black men and white women, and what can be implied in these like romantic and or sexual relationships between black women and white men, and then the absolute fear that black men bring up for the white community when it comes to white women. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I thought that was really good to put in conversation with this because it's so reminiscent of it, but also twisted.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And the white woman is still on the other side living their best life. while this African American male is deceased at the hands of someone else. So,
Yeah, absolutely. It's reminiscent of it, but also
mm-hmm.
feels not really updated because yes, this was an actual interracial relationship, so I guess things have progressed to that point. But again, like you said, a black man is dead, the same way Emmett Till,
Mm-hmm.
a black child dead. And I want to make sure we know that he was a child. He's 14 years old, so he was
Yeah.
murdered as a child. Um, and even his like boyish sort of like advances were read as adult, at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
as a threat, really, because I mean, me personally, the pictures that you see of Emmett looks like a baby.
mhm,
He looks like a child. So to me, while that could have been an educational moment, um, absolutely teach him that catcalling, because that's kind of what happened, is not the way to go. That is disrespectful, and I don't promote that in any means possible. But
mhm,
does someone deserve to die because of that? That should have been an educational moment, being that he's 14.
exactly.
So,
And then also you think about how many white men have catcalled or whistled at or
oh
whatever
yeah, and black women,
black women, right?
let
And then
alone white women.
let alone white women, and and then as a black woman, there's no recourse for that.
Yeah, at all.
No recourse. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
And then my thing is like her Carol Bryant's husband. How is that a threat? He's 14.
Yeah. I mean,
And it doesn't seem like Carol
already
wanted him.
racist. They were already racist and
Oh yeah,
looking to basically
to do
commit
something like that.
crimes.
Yeah,
And then here comes a kid who doesn't really know any better necessarily, and
yeah,
it's doing something that a lot of men do, a lot of boys do, a lot of boys are taught to do,
yeah.
and you know
I do
they.
get that. But I'm saying like if you took out, for example, like the race element, which is a huge element of this, so it's hard to take that out. But
Mhm.
like to me, I would not see that as a threat.
Yeah, I mean it's like yes, it's annoying. Nobody wants somebody like catcalling
Catcalling.
them on the street, but if it's 2022 and we still haven't gotten people to behave as far as catcalling is concerned,
Hmm.
in 1955, like
Yeah,
it wasn't. I don't think that it was. It didn't warrant death, right?
absolutely not. Yeah, you
Uh,
would think that we were a little more progressive at that point,
hmm
but apparently not. So,
Yeah, and then just putting that in conversation with like Christian, it's like you still see that the white privilege prevails.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
If
Every time.
interracial relationships are allowed, white privilege is still prevailing the same way it did for Carolyn Bryant and whatever. It's like they were able to capitalize off of the narrative of white women, black males relationship. They were able to capitalize off of that differently with the same result.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I think it also pushes the narrative too that whiteness is above the law, which we already knew. As I feel like a lot of African Americans already know, but it
Mhm,
just further perpetuates that in current days time. In
mhm,
2022, if the tables were turned, that probably most likely I can put on everything 99.9% that would have not happened if the tables were turned as far as race is concerned. But for
mhm.
white people, that was allowed back in 1955. Now, even now into 2022. So it just, to me, it just goes to show that we are not progressing like we thought we were. We are not as equal, which I feel like we already knew, but we really aren't. We're the same place that we were in 1955, if you ask me.
Mhm.
Nothing's changed except for a couple of laws to hush African Americans to think they got something, but we really haven't gotten anything.
Well, I think that society's moved to a point of interracial relationships have been much more allowed and much more supported. But
Yeah, but are you going to constantly die, or people are constantly going to be killed because of you're in an interracial relationship and then not prosecuted when something like this happens?
I mean, I don't know. I think it's I don't know. I mean, it's conflicting because it's like yes, interracial relationships should be supported, but if they're
Yeah.
happening under a fetish
Mm-hmm.
and it's problematic situations, then it calls into question.
For sure.
you know?
For sure. I do think the moral of this story is that Black men really, 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 really need to do some self-evaluation work, some healing work, and some like deep-rooted, you could even say therapy, and figure out how to heal themselves instead of targeting a specific group. Like, for example, in Christian's case, he basically kind of targeted Black women as being less than and not desirable for him.
Mm-hmm.
Because your issue is not a Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is really you.
Mm-hmm.
And you just need to do some work to figure out what's going on with you, because it shouldn't come down to race at all. It should be, is this person going to be an equal, or is this person going to be somebody that I can see myself with long term or working with as far as life is concerned, instead of being focused on, oh, she just has to be a white woman. I hate Black women, so I'm going to go over here. So
what I find interesting about the way Black men move as far as their interracial relationships is like, I feel like a lot of times they feel like they have to justify their relationships with white women by putting down Black women.
Mm-hmm.
So the way Black women's interracial relationships work is, this is who I'm with. I don't have to put down a Black man to do it. I'm with this person because this is who I have connection with. This is how I'm moving. There's no need to put down a Black man because I'm with a white man. You know what I mean? Like, there's no impulse to put down because...
I mean, to me, like, putting down a Black man, what does that do for me? And I mean, that's coming from somebody who, I don't think all Black men are not great, but the ones that I have experienced have not been great in my experience. And honestly, that's regardless if you're Black or white. Most men have not been great in my experience. And so, but I don't go around being like, well, if I do bash, it's because of your behavior.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's strictly off of what I'm seeing you do or what you're presenting to me, in your behaviors or the things that you are saying. Yeah. That's what I'm bashing off of, if I'm bashing you. Other than that, there's nothing for me to bash. You have to show me something for me to then bash.
Exactly.
What am I showing you to bash? That I'm not going to be your yes man?
Mm-hmm. I don't get the put down in order to uplift. I don't get that. And it feels like community is really big on, in order to uplift my situation, my interracial relationship, I have to put down a Black woman. And that's like, why do you, if you know, these Black women have nothing to do with what you decide for your life, why are you concerned?
Exactly.
It's probably trauma. They probably got rejected from in like third grade from a Black woman, possibly, and have hated them since.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, you really need to like heal, seek out some therapy, maybe figure out the root of your problem. And that's not to say that you have to then go date Black women. If you still want to date white women, that's fine, or whatever. But figure out really what's the problem with Black women, first of all. Are they holding you to a higher standard, or is it just something that they do that you just maybe don't prefer? Figure out that issue, because I promise you, there's a Black woman that doesn't do those things if you continue to look. And so, it's the root of the issue is bigger than race.
And also, just categorizing all Black women the way they don't want to be categorized as all men. Just all Black women are this way, whatever. And it's like, you might have had a negative experience with a Black woman, right?
Yeah.
Or it might not even really, it might have been your perception of a negative experience. Because a lot of times, and I'm not saying that the Black woman, you didn't have a bad experience, but a lot of times, I feel like they interpret someone just saying, I'm not dealing with your behavior as a negative experience. Yeah. And, so we're going to very well just been like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Especially if
holding them to a higher standard, and that's forbidden.
Yeah. And you know what? If I were a white woman, I would be offended too, because I'd be like, why do you feel like in order to be with me, you feel like you need to put down somebody else? Does that mean you really want to even be with me?
But for one, and that also makes me question, if you're bashing women or Black women, let alone women, you want me to then date you?
Exactly. That's why I'm
you clearly have an issue with women.
Exactly. That's a big red flag, I think, even from white women, is like, don't get with these types of black men who say that problematic stuff about black women, because they will, first off, they do it to black women, they'll do it to you. One.
Exactly.
Number two, if the basis of your relationship is putting someone down, you don't have a basis of a relationship
at all.
You don't.
And he'll put you down too. So
exactly. Or the basis of
let the time
relationship
come.
is not a relationship.
Exactly.
And I think
I'm sorry to say this, but it just seems like this relationship was like bound to be toxic, to go down the hill and or be toxic, and that's kind of what happened. So it's tragic, and to me it's really just sad to see that it mimics the Emmett Till case very closely, and goes to show that a lot of things that we thought had changed from the 1950s to now really hasn't changed. White women, for in this example specifically, are still above the law in some cases, I guess you can say, let alone white supremacy, white privilege is still rampant, still a thing. White tears are huge. And we're really not equal in the society by any means.
Well, the grand narrative is still controlling things about who a black man is, how a white woman behaves, who black women are, who white men are. These grand narratives are still informing policing. They're still informing our lawmaking. They're still informing how we interact with each other socially, our hiring practices, all sorts of things. These grand narratives are still there. They're still informing things, and they have real consequences. People can end up dead.
Yes. Yeah.
So, we're glad we had this conversation about the Courtney Taylor case on this episode of CaseCold. When we found this, we thought it was really interesting and was like necessary to bring up, because it just causes so many questions, so many things you can dive deeper into beyond just the facts of the case. There's so many things tied to it that we're all contemplating right now in our society. So I'm glad we had this conversation.
For sure. And hopefully there is some sort of justice for Christian and his family, because I don't think, murder should be excused. There should be some sort of a consequence in our current governmental state, I guess, or criminal law state. So hopefully, something is sought after, hopefully criminal, but I think his parents are trying to get a civil case maybe for the death. So we will see. But I will say for any and everybody, please do your own homework in healing yourself and growing yourself and figuring out, different things about yourself to then be the best person you can for yourself, let alone someone else. So just do your work. That's really what it comes down to. Do some self reflection, some self-loving, seek out therapy. I'm a fan of therapy myself. So that you're not like pushing these closed-minded narratives on other people and yourself to find yourself in situations like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this death could have been avoided, actually.
100%.
If there was just some self-reflection on why they were getting into this relationship in the first place, like what really is motivating this partnership that they're seeking out. And then, I'm sure they were ignoring red flags,
Yeah. You're ignoring the toxic nature of the relationship. If you have to go back and forth with somebody physically, arguments, okay, to a certain extent, like you're going to have disagreements and arguments or whatever, but it should never get to the point of being physical. Then you really need to evaluate the relationship in yourself and figure out what your next moves are, because that should not have been something they continue to deal with constantly.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this was an absolutely avoidable death, and I think that's what makes it actually less why I have less compassion for it is because I see it as avoidable.
Yeah, 100%.
It makes it like, yes, somebody's dead and the life is lost, so we need to, respect that life that was here. But I guess like we were saying, if we're yelling at you to get off the train tracks,
you got to get off or you're going to get hit.
You see the train and you stay on the tracks. At a certain point, it's like, well, I can't move you. So, lead a horse to water, but can't make them drink. Like,
they always say too on an airplane, before you can save somebody else, you have to save yourself. So with back to the train analogy, you can't pull that person off if they don't want to come,
Exactly.
You got to be your own advocate first.
Yes. And you're a grown man at that point. I mean, 27 is young, but you're a grown man at that point. There's nothing nobody could do to stop you from being in this relationship, from living with this woman, doing whatever you want. And you saw that as the best move for yourself for whatever reason.
Yep.
And unfortunately,
that's the consequences.
Yeah.
So yeah, while it's unfortunate, the consequences, there's always consequences at the end of the choices that you make.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we're going to leave you guys on that nugget. Be conscious of the choices that you make, because there's always consequences at the end of those choices. We hope that you guys enjoyed this chat on Courtney Taylor and Christian. I'm not going to butcher his name, so just Christian. And we're probably going to stay up on this topic to see kind of what happens. But I don't know if we'll do like another episode or anything like that. But yeah, definitely an interesting conversation. And yeah, so thanks for watching, guys.
Yeah, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye, guys.